AM 1460, the new WXBR. You were listening to the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. Peter Zimbor and Mike Pava here with you on this Tuesday morning. As is the case all week during the 7 o'clock hour, we're chatting with as many Councilor-at-Large candidates are available to us here at the Metro South Morning Show in the city of Brockton. And joining us in studio right now is a candidate for Brockton City Council-At-Large, Mr. Jim Daley. Jim, good morning and welcome to the program. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, Peter. How are you doing this morning?
We are doing quite well. You're a guy who has a history in politics in Brockton at the ward level in terms of being a Ward 6 school committee member. Why did you decide, after taking a little break from Brockton politics, to jump in the race to run for City Council-At-Large?
Well, it's something that I had been interested in before I took a break from the school committee. But looking at the city, I don't see that we're making much progress in battling crime, in cleaning up the city, in improving our infrastructure, attracting businesses, and creating jobs for the people in Brockton. All of this is what's going to help the city go forward, and hopefully, with people working, they'll have less time to do the crime.
So how do we accomplish those things that you would like to see the city accomplish under your tenure if you get elected to the city council?
Well, everything comes down to finances. No matter what you want to do, we have to make sure our finances are in order, and I think they're in fairly decent order. If we have funds, we need to assess our buildings. I know there was an assessment going on when Jim Harrington was here. I don't know if it was ever completed, to see what buildings were in need and to prioritize them. They were doing that both on the city side and the school side. I don't know if that was ever completed. I have not seen that.
What benefits do you think you have having been a school committee member going to the city council?
Well, actually, one of the most complicated things in government is finance. The job itself is not difficult, but understanding where the money goes, how you can spend certain pots of money only on certain things, and how you can combine different streams of revenue, that will determine how you can put extra money, I shouldn't say extra money, move money around so that you can prioritize things that are in the budget that you couldn't put in if you have money in other pots. One of the best things is grants, but you also have to have somebody that has the expertise to write the grant and to report the grant, because reporting the grant is the hardest thing. Because if you don't report it properly and they say you haven't spent the money on the proper things, you're going to have to pay that money back. So it's not just having the money and spending the money, it's doing it properly.
Once again, we're chatting with Jim Daley in studio here on AM 1460, the new WXBR candidate for Brockton City Council-At-Large. When you first decided to put your hat in the race to become a Brockton City Council-At-Large, it seemed like it was the thing to do. Everybody and their brother was running. The field got cut from 15 to 8, which is where we're now at, moving into this general election in November. You must have been pleased when you made that final cut.
I was, and actually I was surprised to see so many people, because there hasn't been as much interest in city politics. It's amazing, because you had 4 candidates for mayor all of a sudden. You were lucky to have 2 in the past. And, 4 active people running, not just, there were 3 people, but one was a perennial candidate. But to see 15 people run, it's great to see people have the interest in the politics, knowing that the local politics is what's going to affect you the most. That's how your property taxes are spent. And that's the ones that are going to hire the police, the fire, the DPW. They're going to fix your roads. They're going to get your lighting done. They're the ones that are going to work for you in the city where you live.
Jim, I want to thank you for joining us on the program this morning. You're not a newcomer to politics by any means, so what made you want to run for this seat in particular?
I wanted to go on the city council, and I thought that I could honestly, truly make a contribution. As I said at the beginning, I didn't see that there was any real progress going. I don't see our roads being any better. I constantly hear how our police are underfunded and understaffed. The fire has been cut, and I understand there's an economic slowdown. But if we have funds and we're able to move them around, we should be putting them where the people need them. We need our roads fixed, yes. We need our buildings maintained, yes. But public safety, fire, police, and health have to come first. The Department of Health can do the inspections to get homes, businesses cleaned up, make Brockton more attractive. We can have, I know there is a task force with the police, the fire, and the health department. We need to get them more active so we can keep our city clean.
What are some of the pressing issues in this election, and how will you attack those issues if you're elected to the city council?
One of the big issues that have been around for quite some time has been the power plant. I'm not a proponent, or am I against the power plant. I would like to see the issue properly debated, and I really don't think that there has been a real debate. Everybody has come out.
You haven't been listening to the station, evidently.
You know what? No, I hear mostly one side. I don't know why we're not hearing the other side publicly as much, but when I'm talking to people, I hear more and more people wanting the power plant. Now, I know a lot of them, a lot of people want the power plant to get the financing in the city that they think is going to help keep the taxes low. I don't know that that's really what's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is that's going to ease the burden, but I don't think it's going to lower our property taxes. I don't see that happening.
So if you're not for or against the power plant, what is the proper avenue to go in regards to this issue?
We have to look at, is this going to really benefit Brockton? My personal opinion is I would like to see us go either solar, wind, water. Obviously, we don't have water to generate power, but we could do wind and solar. But that's not happening. These businesses are not knocking on our doors. They're not saying, we want to use this property. So let's use the property for what we can. And if this is going to work for us, then I could vote for it. If it's not going to work and benefit Brockton, I can vote against it.
Once again, we're chatting with Jim Daley in studio here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. You were listening to the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. You mentioned water moments ago. Water has been a big issue, which
Absolutely.
has come about in a lot of political discussion in relation to the city of Brockton as of late. There is a contract that the city of Brockton currently has with the Aquaria Desalination Plant, which has the city of Brockton paying $6 million, in excess of $6 million a year to this plant, really not getting too much, if anything, in return. There has been debate on whether or not the city can or cannot break the contract it has with the plant, on whether or not they're in breach of contract or something of that nature. What are your thoughts on the contract that the city currently has with this plant, and do you think that it's something the city can get themselves out of?
I don't think the city's going to be able to get themselves out of it. Is there a breach of contract? There's a minor breach in contract in that Aquaria has not aided the city in marketing the water. That's not a sufficient breach to get out of the contract. Is it enough to do some negotiations? Possibly. Now, I know there's also a proposal out there to buy the plant. If buying the plant will allow us to lower our debt, well, that would make more sense than just reducing the debt and still getting nothing for it. So you got to look at it, see what we're going to have. See where the finances are going to take us and what we can afford. I would not, at this moment, like to see us buy any water plant right now. I don't want to tie up our debt because we may need that for other things, for our infrastructure, for building repairs, for road repair. We may need to use that to borrow money for almost anything. We've been so far behind the eight ball in fixing things that everything is done on an emergency basis. We need to stop running our city on emergency basis.
Once again, we're chatting with Jim Daley here on AM 1460, the new WXBR candidate for Brockton City Council-At-Large. In the 2 years in which you were not a public servant in Brockton, you were away from the school committee prior to this run for City Council-At-Large. In the 2 years since you were a school committee member, what have you missed most about being involved in politics and government within the city?
Missed not being in politics? Not a whole lot.
Well, government, we'll say. I think politics and government aren't one and the same necessarily.
Right. I absolutely enjoy working on committees. I love seeing an idea come, work on it, the back and forth and the adjustments and the product that comes out there at the end. It's an amazing thing. When you go back and look what you started with and what you came out with, how it's really going to change and work and benefit everyone instead of generally. It's a lot different than when it starts. I enjoy that. I am somewhat of a detail person. I can see things that I missed. I like to think out of the box a little. I like to contribute as much as I possibly can to a discussion and a proposal.
Let's talk a little bit about public safety. Recently, the City Council approved $3.6 million to be taken out of the city's stabilization fund to pay for the firefighters' contract. With the cops also needing a contract, where do we get the money to get more police onto the streets to curb the violence that's going on in the city?
Well, first, the violence that's going on in the city right now is not because there's an insurgence of violence. It's the people that I believe it's a fault of the court system and the state labs that have caused people not to be prosecuted for crimes they've committed in the past and all the evidence thrown out. That, I believe, is the biggest cause. But find the money. Unfortunately, when you're taking money out of the reserves to pay for salaries, that's going to be made up somewhere. You can't survive on your reserve. I don't know where they're going to find the money. We'll have to look at the budget. We'll have to look at the accounts that we have and see where the money's going to come from. I can't tell you where the money's going to come from right now. I don't have the books.
Now, moments ago, Jim, you mentioned that you only tend to hear one side of the story in regards to the issue in relation to Brockton's proposed power plant. What side do you feel that you hear from?
You mean publicly?
Yes.
Okay. You hear the anti-power plant. You get the mailings, you hear the advertising, and I sometimes when I go to some of these debates and some of the forums that I've gone to, you hear a lot there. But you don't hear a lot of people saying, I'm pro-power plant, except when you're one-on-one with people. That's about the only time you hear it.
During this upcoming general election in the bid for mayor, incumbent Linda Balzotti is opposed to the power plant. Mm-hmm. Her opponent, candidate Bill Carpenter, it would be willing to allow the power plant to come to the city of Brockton, as he says, if the deal was something that would benefit the city. Do you see this upcoming mayoral election as a anti versus pro power plant debate in relation to public opinion on this issue?
No. I think it's more personality, and and I do think it's somewhat of the issues, but I don't think it's strictly power plant. That's one issue.
Once again, we're chatting with Jim Daley here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. We've talked about the Aquaria desal plant. We've talked about the power plant. We've talked about public safety and how it's going to be funded. What are some of the other issues that we have not spoken about that you think are really going to come up in relation to this general election in November at debates and whatnot?
I don't know if it's necessarily going to come up in the debates, but one of the things I'd like to see changed is I'd like to see us stop using cold patch in fixing our roads. It's probably the most worthless thing that we have. I've seen potholes filled, and 2-3 hours later, it's gone. Cold patch is not a fix. It's not even a good temporary measure. I don't understand why we're not actually filling the holes with the proper asphalt. Fix the hole once, it's done, instead of having to go back over and over and over again. And you got all that cold patch that the cars and trucks are running over, spewing all over the street. Now your streets are dirty again, and you got a hole.
Now, we mentioned earlier that you got your start in Brockton politics or you became prominent in Brockton politics as a Ward 6 school community member. Why did you decide to run for Council-At-Large as opposed to, say, the council seat in your home ward?
I actually thought about that, and I would be running against Michelle Dubois, who has been doing a fairly good job, and it doesn't make sense to take somebody out that is working for the best interest of the city. So it didn't make sense for me to run against her. So I looked at the city council, and I decided to run, and then I heard that there were two councilors that were not going to run for re-election, and I said, well, then that's probably the best way to get in, because it's so hard when you're running citywide to break in with incumbents. I mean, just look at the results of the last election. The two incumbents got 43 and I think 3,600 votes. The next challenger, closest challenger, only got 1,800. So that name recognition means an awful lot.
Do you think the name recognition you had from your days as a school community member helped?
I think it helped some. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to some people that I know and I see quite often. They said, I didn't even know you were running. So name recognition is great. I guess I got to get out and get more information out there too.
We're chatting with Jim Daley in studio here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. Are you looking forward to the debates with your contemporaries that are also running for the seat?
I'm not a lover of debates. If people have questions, I'll give my opinions, I'll give my thoughts. Debates can honestly bring a whole lot of chatter and not a lot of results. But and I'll take it on. If that's what we got to do, that's what I'm going to do. I'll put in my 2 cents.
Having been a school committee member, what is normally the relationship between school committee and city council within the confines of city government?
There really isn't a whole lot of interaction between the two. The way the system works is the state sets the school's funding. The city council either votes to fund it or not to fund it. And they actually only have a flexibility of $100,000. So they can cut $100,000 from the school department budget. That's all they're allowed to do. So as far as the school side is, city council has little or to do with it. The only thing city council can honestly increase or decrease is transportation, because that's a non-net school. Repairs, which is the obligation of the city, because the school department actually owns nothing. Everything is owned by the city. That's why the burden of repairs and building the schools is on the city. So that's part of the financing, understanding the financing and all.
How similar is the financing between what the city council looks at and the school committee looks at?
Actually, it's similar, but servicing the debt on the schools, that's where we're very lucky. We get 80 to 90%. I think we're getting 90% reimbursement on the last 2 schools. And that's one thing. The state is very good at funding school buildings. They don't seem to be as good as building new fire stations, police stations, and that for the cities.
Jim, before we let you go, any final words for our listeners this morning in relation to your bid for City Council-At-Large in the city of Brockton in the general election in early November?
This is my chance to do a little commercial?
Go for it.
Okay. I'd like people to consider me for Council-At-Large. I try to think outside the box. I work for the citizens. My vote is going to be reflective of what the people want. I have opinions. I have desires. But I represent the people, and I'm supposed to speak and vote for what the people want. That's what I will do.
That is Jim Daley running for Brockton City Council-At-Large. General election is November 5th. You're listening to AM 1460, the new WXBR, the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. Peter Zimborn and Mike Pava here with you on this Tuesday morning. We're going to step aside for a quick break. When we return, Mike Pava brings us a local news update. Stick with us.